Are you ready to be the change? If so, you've come to the right place. You are about to join a movement of entrepreneurs who are empowering people, saving the planet, and turning their passion into profits while creating the lifestyle of their dreams. If you don't believe us, check out our website at entrepreneursforachange.com, a place where you can be inspired, mentored, and supported by a tribe of change-making entrepreneurs just like you. Now, before diving into the interview, I want to encourage you to rate, review, and download Entrepreneurs for a Change on iTunes. This really helps us reach more people with inspiring stories of entrepreneurs who are changing the world. Also, if these stories inspire you to start a world-changing business of your own, head over to our website at entrepreneursforachange.com and download the Business Changemakers Toolkit to get a jumpstart today. Now on to the show. Hello, amazing changemakers. I am so glad to have this amazing guest with me today who I have witnessed turn her company and her mission into an unstoppable movement for women's empowerment. Michelle Fetsch is the visionary behind the Bear campaign that is empowering women of all shapes and sizes to expose their bodies and life stories with the world. She's been coaching, mentoring, and advocating for women for almost 15 years and is committed to supporting all women in being seen, heard, and free. Now, Michelle spent years struggling with eating disorders, low self-confidence, and body image issues. And so that experience, that struggle, inspired her to found Women Enough in 2010. Women Enough is a global support network committed to empowering women in realizing their personal and professional greatness. Now, their mission is that they believe a woman's worth goes far beyond her beauty. And so they are actively involved in spreading this message through media campaigns, events, and local peer-to-peer support groups. So I have watched Michelle over the past year grow awareness of her company and of the Bear campaign to phenomenal proportions. So I'm really happy to have her with us to share how you can turn your change-making business into a world-changing movement like she has. So Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. I would love to hear more about, what actually inspired you to start this business. So I understand that you had these struggles for a period of time. Was there actually an aha moment that sparked your desire to start Women Enough?
Well, yes, and thank you so much for having me on your show. In 2010, I was in a leadership development course through Landmark Education, and I was at the beginning of my recovery, both my physical recovery, my emotional recovery, and really it was like my life was in recovery. And one day I looked in the mirror and I realized that my entire conversation and belief system about myself was that I wasn't enough. Wasn't good enough. I wasn't thin enough. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't tall enough. And you get the point. And I looked in the mirror and I'm like, enough is enough. And at the time, it was my complete reality. I suffered so much around feeling like I was not good enough. It impacted my going after my dreams and feeling like I had the confidence to really even see something through or just be, the confidence to be in relationship with people. So I'm like, enough is enough. And I was in this course where the course was based on everyone taking on a community project that they set forth at the beginning of the program. And I have always been really passionate about women. And at first I thought, I want to create a fashion line that changes the world. I grew up looking at beauty magazines. I love to express myself in different ways. However, I realized there was such a disparity in the fashion industry. And with my own recovery, I didn't want to put myself in a position where I felt like I would be negatively impacted by the fashion industry. And then also I was like, okay, would that be doing enough? Would my project be enough? Would I be enough if I did that? And then I just realized how absolutely outrageous that conversation is in really my life. And so I realized that in order for me to change my life, that I would need to take on something that was far bigger than me, something that was beyond me, because I have such a passion for supporting other people, but oftentimes I've not been very good at supporting and taking care of myself. So I knew if I took on a really big game of supporting other women, that I would also be pulled into living it out myself. So that's when I declared I wanted to create Women Enough to support women in having a healthy body image and self-esteem by creating media messages that would empower women by featuring everyday women that women could really relate to and look up to.
So help me understand the scope of Women Enough. So what is your business model exactly? So, on one hand, I see you've got these campaigns, but help us understand all the things that you guys do and how you generate revenue from it.
Well, truthfully, so far, this has been something that I started in 2010, and I'm such a visionary person that it's been really difficult for me to focus on one specific aspect because I am very passionate. So I've been working to photograph these women. So like going to the Bear campaign. So one aspect is campaigns. And I really wanted to create positive, realistic media campaigns so that women, wherever they go, they could see that they're not alone. They would be able to relate to somebody and they could really feel supported by media instead of feel bashed by media. And I also realized that focusing on looks and focusing on beauty is part of the problem. So, I worked with a business strategist for about a year, and I realized I wanted to do more than just create media campaigns. I wanted to actually empower women in going into the deepest, darkest parts of themselves in order to find the freedom to live out who they were meant to be. So for the past few years, we've been photographing women for the Bear campaign, and only this summer. So I've been gathering these women together for a few years in a very intimate women's circle and getting them to share their stories, from their most proud moments to their deepest, darkest secrets. And then they pose naked. And it's an extremely cathartic, healing, powerful experience. And for most of these women, they've never been in such a safe container with other women. So there's the aspect of, having this Bear experience. And the intention was always to create a media campaign, but only this summer did I launch that, as an actual campaign because I've had the photos for a while. And then, so when I was in Bali, I led a mastermind. It was the first mastermind that I've created and led. And the mastermind was a pilot for a program that our team is working on creating that basically brings women's circles online. And the reason why I want to do that is because women have these experiences already, and people have these experiences too, where they go to a workshop or they go to a retreat or they go to some weekend thing and they get really inspired. They have new tools, but then they go back in their everyday life and they really don't have the support to integrate it and to carry it through. So the goal with this program that we're launching, which is called Ignition Circles, is that women can not only have the inspirational empowerment, She-Ra thing, but that they can actually have a actionable guided group that will really help to cheer them on into, in all areas of their lives. So there's the media campaigns and the women's circles. That's the business model. Now, I have a tendency of doing things the hard way. And, so far, I've done everything out of pocket, and only this spring did I start generating revenue. I was putting on events, I was testing the concept, and now this past year, I really decided that it was time to put this work really into the world. And I made that commitment to myself that I would do it, regardless of the fact that I didn't necessarily have the right copy. I didn't necessarily have everything together and done in the right way, and I don't know so many things. But I realized that that's in general what gets in the way of, specifically in the mindsets of women. And, I'm not a man, so I can't really say, and I'm sure that they deal with their own stuff, but it's if only I'm this, if I'm pretty or if I'm thinner or if I'm smarter, then I can have this, or then it will work out. And I realized that that's how I was treating the development of Women Enough, is that when I have the right copy, when I have everything perfect, then I will put it out into the world. Then everything will work out. And I realized it's just another conversation of not being enough. And so I decided this summer to launch it while I was in Bali.
That is so inspiring. And I would say, Michelle, that your journey is really not so different from a lot of social entrepreneurs. I mean, especially social entrepreneurs where funding is very tough to get for, impact ventures that aren't, based in some type of disruptive technology, because the impact investors tend to be a lot more attracted to, game-changing, social innovation that's technology-based that might give them a 10x return. So many social entrepreneurs start off exactly the way you did. And it's very true that, you have referenced something which is an experience that all entrepreneurs go through, which is you don't know what you don't know. Okay. So, I wouldn't say that given a choice of easy or difficult, you always choose the hard. I mean, often what, choices we're presented with, it's the only choice that we know to do. And it feels hard because we may be doing it for the first time, or we don't know if there are other options. I mean, growing your business through self-funding it can be really challenging, but raising money is also really challenging too, Michelle. I've spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs about what it's like to raise money, and they're like, oh my God, it's a lot of work. So just in general, being an entrepreneur, especially when you're holding a vision of something that's greater than yourself, and that your venture is actually a mission, and what you're doing is a purpose, it's not going to be easy because you're not selling shit online. That doesn't matter, right? This reminds me of one of the stories that comes to my mind, Michelle, I think her name is Leila or Lila Jana. I'm not sure how to pronounce her first name. It's Leila, and then Jana. She's the founder of a company called Sama Source, and she works with refugees in, places like Africa and trains them to do micro work in refugee camps, kind of like Mechanical Turk type of work. And, wow. And she then, sells those services to companies, like technology companies in the Bay Area. And she was a darling, she still is a darling of the social enterprise space, especially in the Bay Area. But you know what? In the very beginning of her venture, I remember she gave a talk at the Hub San Francisco, and she said that for 4 months, she couch surfed on her ex-boyfriend's couch to grow her startup. I mean, that is awkward.
Yeah.
But that's what she was willing to do, right? So, you got to do what you got to do if it's your calling, your mission. So let me just clarify. Do you work with all kinds of women, or do you work with specific kinds of women, like women entrepreneurs or women leaders?
I truthfully work with all kinds of women, and the message is, I know that it's pressed into people to communicate your target market and to, have your customer avatar. And realistically, in my head, it's women between, 30 and 42 that are, making, $80,000 a year to $200,000 or more a year, and, live in metropolitan cities and et cetera. But the message is pure, and it's not a product-based business, and it's such a cause-based organization. And it just really calls to so many different women. I mean, I'm so surprised. So I said I'm so surprised. Well, I'm not really, because I know the issue. I know that women from all walks of life, all shapes, sizes, ethnicities, body types, backgrounds, etc., deal with the conversation of not feeling enough for whatever reason. And, with these ignition circles, I've had women from areas, that are, they're living in suburbia, and they want to start working on a project that they're really impassioned about, and they're starting to feel like they want to make a difference in a larger way. Or women in metropolitan areas that are also entrepreneurs, and they really want to take their business to the next level. Or women that are just really focused on healing their own issues around their body image and their self-esteem, and they're ready to commit to not rejecting themselves, regardless of whatever they feel around themselves. Like, they really take on not rejecting themselves as a commitment to letting that part of themselves be healed.
I can certainly see how this issue that plagues women really does cross so many different, social strata and demographic boundaries. So I'm kind of curious, since you've been working on this for quite some time. So I just kind of want to frame this question, because I think this low self-esteem stuff, the low self-worth, not feeling that we're enough, is a common problem. It's like a paradigm that billions of women experience. It's almost like we have accepted this as our lot in life. So I'm kind of curious to know, what on earth do you think is going on with women in this world around low self-esteem, eating disorders, and I can share, too, that I myself have struggled with these problems, but it didn't show up for me as eating disorders. It showed up with struggling over suicide when I was a teenager. In the course of the decades that passed, I've developed tools to kind of manage those kind of destructive, self-defeating thoughts. But for a long time, that reality really dominated my worldview. The struggle of just wanting to die because I feel like I didn't deserve to be walking on this planet because I just wasn't good enough. I wasn't perfect enough and all that. And even up until recently, I would, I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with my body, especially around the time of my moon, because I find it to be a huge hassle, right? Sometimes I want to shake my fist at the creator, why did you design us this way? What woman would have chosen, yes, I want to bleed profusely for a week every month, for the rest of my life. No, if you had taken a poll, all of us would have said, hell no, right? So there are moments where I'm just really inconvenienced by this because of all the additional logistical challenges we have to go through to manage this, which is a global problem. That's what keeps women in developing countries out of school, because there aren't adequate bathroom facilities. They don't have access to low-cost, sanitary pads. So, women in Africa, women in India, they don't go to school when they drop out of school as adolescents because they don't have a private place to deal with these things, right? And so I used to just be angry and want to shake my fist at the creator and believe, and I'd make statements like, it's just a curse to be born in a woman's body. It is truly a curse. And I would just hate myself because I felt like I was a spirit trapped in a suboptimal body, stacked with these obstacles and, glass ceiling and discrimination just stacked against me. So making it so much harder for me to accomplish the things that I wanted to accomplish in this world as a female, as a woman of color. Okay. And at a certain point, I've gone through I've done so much work. I've, worked with shamanic medicines. Every time I do this type of work, another layer kind of gets peeled off. And, it was just wow, this is the problem is with our culture. The problem is with, the power structures that are in place. The problem is with the, global misogyny. So I'm kind of curious, why do you think this is such a problem? And for women all over the world, and do you think it's a problem that is increasing or is it decreasing?
Gosh, well, when I was reading that question, so I'd actually like to just share kind of the experience that I had last night. And so I was reading over your questions last night, and then I started looking at different women that were dealing with things in India, like girls that went out to go to the bathroom and then were gang raped and hung and hanged, and, girls trying to go to school and getting gang raped and then being in a community where no one does anything about it. And so I went to sleep really with this a lot of heaviness on me and a lot of sense of feeling the need to be responsible for all of these things and to do something about it. And, I woke up screaming in the middle of the night, jumped from my bed, and I ran down the hall of my friend's house who I'm staying with. I'm also, couch surfing. I have a bed, so I'm bed surfing. And, and I was saying in my sleep, they're coming for me or they're going to get me. And then I realized, I was wait, and then there's no one that's coming to save me. And I just had this moment of realization afterwards. It's not only bringing up things about my own childhood, but realizing that all over the world, girls will be running. they will be chased, they will be screaming in fear, and they will realize that no one is coming for them. No one is coming for them. And, so your question last night really like pierced my heart. And today as well, I've been thinking about it all day long. And, the problem, I think I'm turning 30 in November. I grew up in a small town in northern Minnesota. And I've only lived, the only other place that I lived was in Bali, and only for 7 months. So my own experience of different cultures and global cultures is very limited. However, I've always had a huge passion about it. I read the book Half the Sky, and I've read a lot of other like different feminist movement books. And it's really frightening and it's really angering. And there's an aspect of me that even feels mad at myself sometimes for living such a normal life when there's people all over the world that will never get to experience the kind of peace and safety that us in the Western world don't even understand that we have.
For me personally, because I feel like I have won the birth lottery in many different ways. I enjoy life where I do whatever the hell I want. I go wherever the hell I want. There's no man trying to control me. And I enjoy freedoms that, 99.9% of the women in the world do not enjoy. And, for me, that really does fuel my passion for, using the resources, the, skills, experience, and the intelligence that I've developed, up until now to being a part of the solution. So, I know it's a huge problem that, I could imagine for you as the leader of, as the vision holder and the leader of your company, that it might, I'm sure it very often actually probably feels quite vulnerable for you to be in this position, putting yourself out there in the world, tackling this huge global problem, having to, rally women who understand that there is this problem and who need a leader like you to be able to, help them direct their energies. Because most of us, most women just accept this as our lot in life. And so it's just, it's rare that there is an individual that, is willing to just kind of, step out there and just say, hey, enough of this. So thank you for taking that risk for your own personal comfort in addressing this very, very big problem. Would you have anything to share with us around your experience related to risk-taking and being a leader confronting a massive global problem? How has that felt for you, being in this position?
My experience throughout my life has been somebody that is really interested in taking risks. When I moved out when I was 15. I started corporate America at age 19. And then I moved, one day I was totally fed up of the situation and some of the things, bullying and such of women in that company towards me. And I quit. And so I decided within, 2 weeks I was going to pack my car, pack what I could fit in my car and drive to California and move. And every time in my life that I've taken a risk, the reward has outweighed, the pressure of the risk or, the significance of the risk. And realistically, it's like every time I have taken a risk, I've had so much more fulfillment because of it. And I've ended up learning things and understanding things that I never would have known had I not taken those risks. So, in January, I quit my job where I was working for a company, and I really, I was working for a startup, and I must have been working 70, 80 hours a week. I really don't know, but I literally never did anything else but work. And I was trying to prove myself. It was another version of do you want me? Am I good enough? I'll just keep doing whatever you want in order to, gain love, affection, acceptance, whatever, approval. And I realized wow, this is who I've been my whole life, is that I help and I build other people's communities and, rally people to launch brands. And, so I put up so much effort for other people, but what was really missing was me stopping and taking care of myself. And, I was just so fed up. And in January, I bought a one-way ticket to Bali. And then the next day I quit my job. And, I remember thinking, like, what the fuck did I just do? I'm quitting my good paying job and, I have no idea how things are going to look. Am I really doing this? What am I going to do? How is this going to work? And then I'm like, I actually get to the point in my life several times where I realize that, and there's a quote, the day came when the risk it took to remain tightly closed in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to bloom. And there's been so many times in my life where it's been so painful to stay where I'm at with my upbringing, with a lot of different situations. And so even though I was afraid, it felt like in a sense, like I had to in order to really live into who I want to be and to find something new, to find peace, to go after my dreams, to whatever. So over the course of the year, and there's a lot of times where I don't feel comfortable. I have been, essentially I was living in Bali. I came back from Bali at the end of July, and then I went to Long Island. And, I've been like living in different people's houses and on couches and air mattresses and beds and, not having the comfort of my own space. And it can be tiring. And, when there's not a paycheck, every week or every other week, and I'm working all the time, it's like, wow, okay, so this is something that I see, and it's something that I've struggled with. Like, well, how come this is like so needed? And, why is it that I would need to struggle with, finances? But, the thing about it is that I know, almost 30, known I wanted to be an entrepreneur for a long time. And I realized that I just wouldn't be content not making the impact that I really see necessary in the world. And I'm such a visionary person that it oftentimes takes me longer to articulate and to necessarily gather people's agreement or understanding. And I've been working on Women Enough since 2010. And, I kind of started with the branding, and I started to just build community and gather women together. And I would try to explain what I wanted to do, and people didn't get it. And then you include, for instance, the Bear campaign where women are naked, and it's like a huge red flag to people. Try to get somebody to pose naked when they don't know who the hell you are or your brand, and whether or not, you're going to honor the integrity of their body in a public campaign. So there's just so many things in paving the way, that's doing something that I've never done before, that's never happened in the world before, that it takes a long time to get people to follow. It really takes taking risk and doing it over and over and over. And it can be defeating sometimes, but it's also, the moments of when you launch something or do something and it lands with someone, and then you realize, okay, I'm doing this for a purpose. I know that I'm doing this for a reason. And I've had women share with me that, so many ways that they realize that they're not alone, that they're inspired, that they were the woman that had the eating disorder, that didn't feel enough, that etc. So it's it all, it's the push to have the vision really come into fruition. And to me, it's worth all of the risk.
Yeah. So, in hearing your story up until this point, it seems like there are 3 themes that have emerged for me listening to you related to the keys to turning your change-making business into a world-changing movement. So you've spoken about feeling like this is your purpose, this is your calling, you can't, you're not going to be satisfied unless you are, working on this. It seems like there's a drive for you to be working on this mission through your business. Is that correct? It's that sense of purpose?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, another theme that comes up is the willingness to take risks, to do something, to push the bounds of your comfort zone. Would that also be a factor too, that you would say?
Absolutely. I have a talk around the relationship between risk and reward.
Okay. And I would agree with you too, because to be an entrepreneur, you have to be a risk taker. If you're not a risk taker, be an employee, right? But if you want to change the world, that is a risk-taking activity right there. So
yeah.
And then the third thing that comes up for me listening to your story is this sense of persistence, to not give up.
Yeah, I've been told for a long time, like when I'm passionate about something, I have just wells of reserve left to do something. And I would consider it more than being persistent, like relentless. I am relentless. All day long, I'm emailing people, messaging people, like asking them to learn about the campaign, to share their story, to feature the campaign, to feature the story. I just tell people the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And, I happen to be like that sometimes in relationship too. And, sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes there's both the strengths and weaknesses of that particular thing. But yeah, it's like being relentless. And I know that so many people that are entrepreneurs, especially like more social entrepreneurs or, cause related entrepreneurs, they are so passionate and dedicated to what they're doing that they are relentless. It's this obsession.
Yeah. I mean, one of the key defining characteristics of social entrepreneurs particularly is their sense of tenacity, because they are so impassioned by this purpose that drives them that they do not take no for an answer. And they work relentlessly to find partnerships, to overcome obstacles. It's really quite amazing. And that's what we need if we want to see a perceptible change in the inequalities and injustices that we're trying to resolve through our businesses. So, touching upon your successes now, being able to get other women on board with your, mission. So I've kind of seen you evolve over the year, where it seems like more and more women are kind of joining your mission, and you've done a lot of this through social media. Now, in your masterclass, which folks you can go ahead and download for free at entrepreneursforchange.com/59, Michelle will share with us her blueprint to using social media to turning a mission into a movement. But I do want to just kind of talk to you in, more general terms before we dive into the step by step. How were you able to start getting more and more people to support you? So I think I recall, for example, a fairly recent post that you made on Facebook about some of the traffic that you've been getting to your site, Women Enough. And it was I was like, wow, that's a lot of traffic, and that's pretty hard for one person just to do. So I'd love to kind of understand, how you were able to, motivate, influential women to get on board with you and to get influencers to promote you and your mission.
Well, one of my gifts has always been that I'm enrolling and passionate. Since I was a young kid, if I believe in something, then I'm all at it and I'm all for it. When I was in 8th grade, I raised $10,000 to go to a child orphanage in India. And then 9/11 happened, and then I donated the money to Red Cross. Now, I just went around and I had bake sales. I went around soliciting Fortune 500 companies for donations because I was simply passionate about it. I really believed in it. And that's what really shines through to people, is that I'm really sincere about this. It's not something that I'm pitching. It's something that I deeply believe in. And it's the knowingness that it makes a difference for people. So anytime I'm sharing with people, I'm always sharing from a place of passion, and it lands with them like that. And people love to be around people that are passionate and that are creating possibilities, because they're not only aware of the possibility for and around what the other person or for specifically what I'm saying, but it also allows them to think about a new future for themselves. So a few years ago, I was introduced to the senior vice president of user experience at LinkedIn. And I told him about my idea for having these women's circles online. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting at LinkedIn with a group of 10 of their lead designers and developers working on prototypes for a mobile app. And, I'm thinking, okay, I don't know what the hell that I'm doing. But people are buying into this passion and this vision. And this summer when I launched the Bear campaign, I created the website over Squarespace. I fumbled over it a million times. Like, I feel like such a branding snob. I didn't have any money to work on it. And I just created it out of what I simply had, which was, photos and passion. And then I launched it. And now the photos are absolutely gorgeous. The photos that are on the current campaign are by a photographer named Anastasia Cuba. But what really is, when I launched this campaign and the website, I posted these women's photos and with the photo, their story. And that's what really had people resonating, is like the absolute vulnerability to a completely deeper level than people see when somebody doesn't have their clothes on, or when somebody has their clothes on, And so these women are sharing, naked, they're naked in the photo, and then they're talking about surviving cancer 6 times and feeling like they did everything that they were told to do, and that they took, they took care of themselves, and they feel like their body failed them, and so resenting their body. To women that were molested as kids by family members, to women that had family members that committed suicide, and holding so much pain and resentment around being alive. And so there's all of these stories, and it's really the connecting point for creating a movement is the storytelling, to be able to share something that ignites something deeper within somebody besides just, what a product might do. So I launched the campaign, and I just shared it in some social media groups on Facebook. And literally, I didn't even realize that the campaign got so far until I looked on I got this email from some publication in Europe. And they're like, oh, we want to feature your campaign. And I'm like, okay, cool. Where did you hear about it? They're like, oh, Elite Daily. I'm like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden I started seeing on the analytics that all of these publications were sharing the campaign. So it pretty much happened organically. And it happened super quick.
So it was you plugging away, promoting this on social media, and then it got picked up by influencers in these social media groups, and all of a sudden you're getting, press mentions. Because I noticed, there was one from Elle magazine that you had, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that's so great. Was that all it took? It was you plugging away on social media?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I really feel like I have been working on this for a long time. And when I went to Bali, I was like, okay, what aspect of the business do I launch first? Like, how do I be strategic about it? But I'm like, okay, well, what I have is these women's stories and these photographs of these women that are committed to taking the stand that all women can own their worth beyond their beauty. And that's what I can start with. And the vision is so big, but that's what I have to start with. And those stories are what other people relate to. So I started sharing, I just started sharing on social media and got so much feedback from people. It was in Cosmo and Elle and Elite Daily and Shape and all these other media publications that I'd never heard of because they are in, different countries, continents. And then in order to, I've always been good at getting people enrolled and involved in things, having produced TEDx Women events for a long time. I'm really naturally skilled at gathering community and building community around a vision. So I started to see that traffic was building, and I realized okay, now it's time to, reach out to more people to get more people involved. We need to photograph more women. We need to, I need to be strategic about what I do and don't do, because I'm a very relentless person that I do a lot of outreach and community building, but I'm not an organized person. I'm not a detail-oriented person. So I have to find people and continually have enrollment conversations with people, inviting them to be part of this. And, some people stick and some people don't.
Are they mostly volunteers?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's basically everyone is. myself included.
Okay. And I do want to dive more into detail over how you leverage the social media traction that you get to attract these volunteers and, get them to join your team in the masterclass, which can be downloaded at entrepreneursforachange.com/59. But this is amazing to hear how you are able to then find and connect with a passionate group of people that are willing to volunteer passionately for your organization and amplify the impact that you're making. So it looks like, listening to what you just shared with us, there are 2 additional success factors that I'd like to highlight. One of which is the passion factor. The power, tapping into the power of your passion. And this seems to me, listening to you is, probably, one of your secret weapons in getting people on board with your vision and your mission. The second one, I would say, is, let me see. So you talked about the power of your passion and then your ability to then leverage communities, to connect with people that have a like-minded passion as well, and to get them on board. And that is truly a quality of leadership, because you know what? You can't just silo yourself if you want to be a change maker. You need to work with other people. You need to create community. Yeah, absolutely. Fabulous. So we're coming to the end of our segment here. Before we dive into our masterclass, I'd love to leave you with my favorite question that I ask of my world-changing entrepreneur guests. Michelle, what do you think is the most effective way to change the world? I truthfully feel like, it's passion and commitment. Wow. Okay, great. Thank you so much for sharing that. How can we best stay in touch with you and Women Enough? You can visit us on www.womenenough.com, and that's plural, WOMEN, enough, ENOUGH.com, Facebook.com/Women Enough, and on Twitter is Women_Enough. And we'll have our crowdfunding campaign that's launched and invite anyone that wants to really revolutionize our media to make a donation today. Fabulous. Thank you so much, Michelle, for the work that you're doing in the world. Keep up the fantastic work and keep inspiring women all over the world with your mission. Have a beautiful day. Thank you. Thanks, folks, for listening to the Entrepreneurs for a Change podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please help us reach more people with inspiring stories like this one by giving us a 5-star rating in iTunes. If this podcast inspires you to join the movement of change-making entrepreneurs, we'd love to give you a jumpstart with our free Business Changemakers Toolkit, which you can download at www.entrepreneursforachange.com/join. If you have a changemaker in mind you'd love for us to interview, go to entrepreneursforachange.com/suggest and tell us who and why. Finally, feel free to stop by facebook.com/entrepreneursforachange to share your thoughts and say hello.